You don't need a health scare to prioritize exercise. You don't need to push yourself to the edge of burnout before you learn that it's okay to set boundaries. And you definitely do not need a massive emotional meltdown before you start working on managing your emotions better. Change doesn't have to be a reaction. It doesn't have to come as a reaction to hitting rock bottom. It can be a conscious choice. It can be a conscious choice you make today. So if you found your way to this video, there is a good chance that you've tried to change, some aspect of your life multiple times. Maybe you want to be more calm when life gets crazy, or consistent with those healthy habits, or more present with your loved ones, or even more aligned with your deepest values. But somewhere along the way, the new habits, they slipped away, and then the old reactive patterns crept their way back in. Now, if some of this resonates, if it sounds familiar, you are in good company. We're all walking around with these incredible visions of our future selves, while our present selves, we're still hitting snooze and ordering takeout. But you need to understand that change doesn't have to come from crisis. So if you tend to wait until something bad happens or until things get really tough before you try to change or before making a change, don't worry. In this video, I will give you 3 tips that have helped me take back control of my life. But let's be honest with ourselves. As humans, we have an interesting relationship with change. It's like we're naturally wired to seek comfort and familiarity, even when it's not serving us. And you've probably seen this pattern in your own life. We put up with situations, habits, or even feelings that aren't ideal, sometimes for years, until something finally happens and pushes us past our breaking point. Then we're ready to say enough is enough. I think about how long I stayed in a role that wasn't good for me, normalizing daily anxiety and telling myself that next year will be different. It took the position disappearing for me to finally confront the fact that I have been avoiding the need for meaningful change. So we wait until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. But my message today is simple. Why wait? Why wait? Does it really have to be that way? Well, to understand why we resist change, we need to understand how the brain works. Our brains evolved primarily to keep us safe. So they scan our environment, looking for patterns and, catching or creating shortcuts, to help us navigate life efficiently. And this is a brilliant survival mechanism because it allows us to function without having to consciously think about every single detail of our daily experience. But the thing is, this mental shortcut, this system, it means our surroundings shape us more than we realize, because we're like sponges, soaking up cues from our environments, mirroring the attitudes of people around us. We naturally fall into routines and familiar thought patterns that match what's around us, the stress levels at work, or even the pace of life in the city where we live. We are always operating on autopilot, thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, living the same patterns day after day. And the thing is, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, they weren't created out of thin air. As children, we absorbed patterns from the adults around us. So we didn't just see how our parents and other adults dealt with life challenges. We internalized their approaches. And all of this became our unconscious blueprints for life. You can take some time to maybe think about your family's relationship with health, with dealing with emotions, with money. Their patterns likely became your default programming through just constant exposure. But the thing is, if you continue allowing your environment control how you think and feel, you train your brain to make you think equal to everything that is familiar to you. And the result of this is that you create more of the same experiences. You continue to hardwire your brain to reflect the problems and personal conditions and circumstances in your life. What I just said, I explained in detail in a video that I will link in the description. But you can think of it as a feedback loop. So your thoughts influence, your actions, which then creates your reality. But then that reality reinforces those same thoughts. Your brain basically builds like a neural highway for thoughts and behaviors that you repeat. So the more you travel down this particular mental road, the wider and smoother it becomes, to the point where it requires almost no conscious effort on your own part. It's now your default way of being. And this is exactly why change feels so uncomfortable at first. Like when you decide to act or think differently, you're forging new neural pathways. It's like choosing to walk through an unknown bushy path when there is a familiar paved highway right next to you. Of course, it will feel challenging at first. But what makes the journey worthwhile is that every time you walk down this new path, every time you choose a different thought or a different action, you are clearing the way. You're making it easier for you the next time. Because even though like your environment has shaped you, it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to continue defining you. You have the power to consciously choose your thoughts and responses instead of just reacting to whatever is happening around you. So what I'm basically saying here, what I'm trying to say is that you can step outside this loop and be greater than your physical conditions or than the physical conditions in your life. So in life, we can either wait for life's challenges to force us to change, or we can choose to change in a state of joy and inspiration. But the thing is that when change comes through crisis, we're usually in our most vulnerable state, emotionally drained, physically exhausted, mentally overwhelmed. We're usually making important life decisions from a place of weakness instead of a place of strength. But now that we know there is another way, we can choose to change. We can choose to change deliberately on our own terms. But that does not mean it won't be uncomfortable. So choosing change proactively still involves discomfort. There will be awkward moments where you try new behaviors. Your daily routines will be disrupted. You'll experience that vulnerable feeling of not knowing what's next, some inconvenience and uncertainty. But the difference is that this discomfort will be meaningful instead of desperate. Think about like an athlete that is knowingly pushing their limits when training versus someone that is being chased, someone running from danger. Now, these two situations, they involve intense physical effort, but the experiences, they are worlds apart. One is driven by fear and survival, and it's chaotic and reactive, while the other comes from a place of purposeful growth. So when you choose change rather than having it forced on you, you gain like several advantages. And the first one is control. You get to decide not just what changes, but how fast you want to go. You get to set the pace that works for you. Secondly, you can actually prepare properly. So instead of like diving headfirst during a crisis, you can take time to gather what you need, build your support system before you start. And then finally, you're going to be able to process your emotions in a healthy way. When you're not in crisis mode, you can actually take the time to understand how you're feeling, and work through it mindfully. So how do we actually shift from reactive change to proactive change, or how do we shift from reactive to proactive change? The first one is you have to start each day by deciding how you want to feel. This is the first step. You then take a quiet moment and ask yourself, how do I want to show up today? Patient, confident, focused. You decide. And then you take a few minutes to mentally rehearse and imagine yourself moving through your day, embodying this quality, being that person. Imagine yourself handling situations that are naturally difficult in new ways. You need to mentally rehearse responding to like the different the triggers in your life differently. Let's say you're normally defensive when someone gives you feedback. Now, in that your internal movie when you're rehearsing, imagine hearing those same words, but this time you're responding with genuine curiosity instead of your usual default response. Because the thing is, the brain, it doesn't really know the difference between what you're vividly imagining and what is actually happening. So every time you go through these mental rehearsals, you're laying down new pathways in your brain, and practicing, these better responses before you need them will make it a lot more easier for you to make the right choice when you really find yourself in those situations. So that's the first one. The second one is you have to be aware of how you feel. Something you need to know is that your body always reacts before your conscious mind catches up. So that feeling where someone says something that immediately annoys you, and before you even have like the time to think about it, your body is already reacting. Maybe your shoulders tense up and your heart starts racing. The way you feel is your guidance system, and you can use it to your advantage if you just learn to pay attention. They're like nudges saying, hey, something is happening here, and that's your chance to like pause and take a breath, because this is going to be the difference between automatically snapping back at the person and choosing a response that you will not regret later. So in that moment, that pause, you can ask yourself, how am I interpreting this situation? Is there another way to look at it? Or my favorite, what would the wisest version of me do right now? This little practice has saved me countless difficult conversations in my life. I do not take it for granted. You have no idea. So it's very important. Now, the third one is you need to celebrate your wins, your small wins. Something interesting about the brain is that it naturally follows the path that feels rewarding. So our brains are wired to repeat what they celebrate. So excuse me, when you catch yourself making a good choice, instead of falling into one of your old habits, give yourself a mental high five. I'm serious. Take a second to feel genuinely good about what you just did, because it's actually your way of telling your brain, hey, let's do more of this. You're literally training your brain to crave more of these positive changes. And each mindful decision here is going to strengthen your ability to choose instead of react. And this way, you're going to be gradually shaping your brain's default responses. So the thing is, change is inevitable. The question isn't whether you will change, but whether you're going to be in the driver's seat or just along for the ride. So I invite you to take a look at your life with fresh eyes. Ask yourself this question: are you choosing change, or are you merely reacting to it? What small steps are you going to take today to prevent urgent wake-up calls later? Thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed our chat. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps the channel grow. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.